Hello and welcome to the PentaxForums.com video review of the new Optio WG-2 GPS waterproof camera. Now, since my last review, I've upgraded to a desk, so it won't be wobbling anymore, and I also don't have any expensive DSLR lenses lying around, as obviously this is a point-and-shoot camera and we can't put those on there. So have no worries, nothing's falling down, everything's stable, we're good to go. So the WG-2 GPS, I believe, is the 14th generation waterproof, outdoor-proof camera from Pentax, and they call these cameras adventure-proof. Basically, you can take it to depths of up to 40 feet, you can drop it from about 6 feet onto a solid surface, and technically, according to Pentax, nothing should happen to it. Now, if it does, they will replace it, as long as what happens to it is covered by the warranty and within the original specifications. So first, let's take a look at the design of the camera. Pentax have improved the design a little bit. I like how it looks. There are some new color options available. You can get this camera in orange, white, red, or black. Now the last two colors come without the GPS unit, and the first two come with a GPS. So basically, if you want a red camera, it won't have a GPS, unfortunately. They didn't have that much flexibility with the colors this time around. But it's still nice that Pentax offers a variety of colors, as some of them are quite ugly, others are nice. This orange is pretty good, although I prefer the red. Now the basic layout of the camera hasn't changed much since the WG-1. I'm just going to go over what's here. We have on the front an IR port, an AF assist light, a microphone, the flash. Pentax have added one LED to the front, so now around the lens there are 6 LEDs. And these are used to illuminate photos in macro mode, and also for other interesting things which we'll touch on later in the review. There's the lens, which is protected by reinforced glass. And then on the side you can attach a strap. On the back we have a half VGA widescreen monitor and the standard point-and-shoot buttons. On the top is the GPS antenna, shutter release, on-off button. On the left side you can connect an HDMI cord or a PC USB cable, which is included. Now with the HDMI cord, it's actually nice because you can plug it straight into your TV and watch videos in high definition off the camera. In order to open these doors, you basically have to slide down the switch and then pull the door away. So open like that. And you'll notice that there's quite a large weather seal in there. Make sure you keep that clean, as otherwise if dust accumulates, water might get in there unexpectedly. And also be careful to close the doors properly if you plan on going underwater. Underneath, there's a tripod mount and then the main battery door. Now one thing I wanted to show you with this is whenever you insert the battery or the SD cards, you should be very careful not to damage the card itself. So let me take the battery out and the card as well. What I recommend doing is first inserting the card, as once you have the battery in there, it's really difficult to push the card in and lock it in place, and you might end up having to use your fingernails. And if you do that, chances are eventually you'll pry the card open and it won't be usable, or it will break. You'll have to get it taped or fixed somehow. So I'm going to put in the card, use my thumb or index finger, push down pretty hard to secure it in place, and then I can put the battery in. So that's the camera. Now before I turn the camera on, I wanted to point out one design feature that I particularly like. And that is, in all 4 corners of the LCD, there's these plastic supports. And basically they protect the screen from being scratched whenever you put the camera down. So say for example you put it down on a rough surface, chances are that these supports will touch the surface and not the LCD itself. So obviously this paper here, if I move the camera around, the LCD isn't even touching anything, but it has its practical applications elsewhere also. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera on, and the reason I mentioned this now about those supports is that as soon as you turn it on, there's something I don't like, and that is that while you're shooting pictures, there's these black bars on either side of the image. And this is because it's a widescreen display, and obviously when you're shooting photos with a point and shoot, the normal format is 4:3. So you get those black bars just because the image doesn't fit the aspect ratio of the screen, and Pentax isn't going to be stretching the image so it looks blurry or pixelated. But if you do go into the menu and switch the recorded resolution down to 12 megapixels, you can actually select 16:9. And I don't know why you would do this, as these photos would be way too widescreen, but if you want to fill out the screen, you can do that. So for the remainder of the review, I want to talk about all the features the camera has, the shooting modes, as well as the GPS module. So on paper, this camera really looks great. It's packed with features, the manual's long, there's a lot of things you could do with it. I want to start off by showing you something that I really liked about it, and that's the 1 centimeter macro. Essentially in this mode, the camera turns into a high magnification macro lens. And what you can do with it, for example, let me take a penny here. I'm going to go into the menu and turn on these macro lights, which are now on in the front, and those will help illuminate the penny. And I can bring the camera literally 1 centimeter away from the penny, press the autofocus button, or press the shutter halfway to focus, and it'll lock. And basically I have a handheld 1-to-1, if not better, image of this penny. You can see the detail there. You can see Lincoln on the penny in the back. So this is quite good. It's really impressive what this camera can do as far as macro goes. And I'm sure it has its uses underwater, where the macro lights will illuminate whatever you're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and go turn those off to save power. Now on the 4-way switch, you can choose your mode, as well as the AF mode, the drive mode, or the flash. So autofocus, you have standard autofocus, which includes face detection. You can also set it to spot or tracking in the menu. There's a close-up macro mode, the 1 centimeter macro mode, which I just used. Pan focus, where the focus doesn't change. Infinity focus, where the focus is fixed to infinity. And actually that's a setting I'd recommend for movies, as the camera does not support AF during video recording. And then there's also manual focus. The AF is pretty good. Obviously it's a standard contrast detect system, but because the lens is so small, the AF speed is perfectly fine and it has no trouble locking on, even when there's not that much contrast. So now let's take a look at the drive modes. Essentially you can choose from the standard single shot self-timer for either 12 seconds or 2 seconds, continuous shooting, which shoots about 1 frame per second, you can see it snapping away there, and the camera is a little bit slow to write to the disk or the SD card. My card is quite fast. It's a 150X card, so it shouldn't take that long for the data to be written down, but that's my only complaint about the in-camera performance. If you go to the instant review, the performance is pretty good. You can zoom out, zoom in. That's nice and quick. It even has a calendar feature. So no complaints as far as performance goes, except for writing to the actual card. Now going back to drive modes, there's a high-speed burst shooting, which essentially takes a series of low-resolution images in sequence, so it's sort of like a video. And there's remote control mode. As I mentioned earlier, there's a port both on the back and the front. And finally, there's the auto bracketing feature, which should be familiar to most advanced users. The flash can be controlled through this button here, the left button on the 4-way pad. You can either have it in auto mode, disable it, have it on, or enable red eye reduction. And if we look at the actual modes, so the WG-2 has a lineup of Pentax's standard scene modes, which are accessed through the auto pick mode, or manually. You can choose, for example, landscape or flower or portrait, and then the camera configures settings according to that particular scene. You can choose high-speed movie, which changes the movie frame rate. And there's a few other interesting ones which you can take a look at if you get the camera. These are pretty standard across all Pentax point-and-shoots, but they keep on adding more and more of these scene modes. Most users, if this is going to be a second camera for you, you probably want to stay in program mode, as that lets you go into the menu and change some settings. So let's take a look at what's available in there. In P mode, you can change the image tone, you can change the contrast, sharpness, saturation, and also control the ISO range, which goes all the way up to 6400. Finally, there's a setting that they've borrowed from the DSLRs, which is the D-range shadow highlight correction. And if you use this, your photos will likely have a slightly wider dynamic range, at least they'll look better. And one drawback with this is that the camera takes a while to process the photos after you shoot them. So performance might not be as good when you do that. Just a thing to keep in mind. Finally, you can control how the camera meters, from automated to center weighted to spot. You can set the resolution, which I'll go ahead and bump back up to 16 megapixels, and the JPEG image quality. Now the camera has a 16 megapixel backlit sensor, which should be an upgrade over the previous WG-1, and actually uses the same technology as is found in the Pentax Q. But what I found is that the image quality isn't that great when shooting stuff that's far away. So for example, landscapes, trees, you won't see a lot of resolution in the distance, and I think the lens is to blame. Obviously it's a very small lens, and Pentax obviously couldn't fit in a huge zoom lens or a large aperture lens on a waterproof camera. So that's likely to blame. So if you're shooting portraits or videos, this camera is fine, but it's not the best for landscape photos. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the video capabilities of the WG-2. Now the video mode has been improved over the past model, and Pentax have finally brought their camera up to more or less modern standards. They've added a full HD recording option as well as a 60 FPS option in 720p. So the camera is going to be much better for action recordings, and it's also nice that it can shoot in full HD. I believe the WG-1 could only shoot 30 FPS at 720p. So that's a pretty big improvement in video mode. And the camera also saves to the H.264.mov format rather than AVI files. So that's another plus for the WG-2. As you may imagine, there are quite a few gimmicky features in the camera. Not all of them are that bad though. For example, there's a mode called Self-Portrait Assist. And this mode combines the face detection technology that the camera has with the outer LEDs. So basically the LEDs flash to indicate where your head is with respect to the center of the frame. And it looks like right now I've managed to center myself, even without being able to see the LCD. So that's quite innovative. Obviously many cameras nowadays have articulating screens, but I doubt we'll see that on a waterproof camera. And if you decide to pick this up, there's a lot of other things you can play with, mostly with the shooting modes and also in the menu. You can process your photos in camera, for example, by pressing the down button. And here are just a few of the options you can choose from. Resize, you can edit movies, you can add borders, you can make an HDR filter, you can rotate images, you can crop, you can add voice memos, and you can write protect them. So a lot of in-camera editing, useful for beginners, but also very handy if you just want to make some quick edits on the fly. Playback mode itself is what you'd expect. A few nice things are the histogram and also the bright and dark area display. So areas that are underexposed flash in yellow, while areas that are overexposed would flash in red. So there are a lot of advanced features in this camera. Now finally I want to talk about the GPS feature, which is turned on through the last setting in the settings menu, which is the third tab. And once you exit the menu, there's a little GPS satellite icon in the upper right of the screen, and once it acquires, you'll see bars by the satellite. It should happen anytime now. The acquisition time is pretty good for this camera, even indoors. After you've booted up the first time, of course. The first time is a little bit longer, just because it has to figure out where it is. And there are a few other options for GPS. You can log your track, so let's say you're on a hike, you can tell the camera to record your position every 15, 30 seconds or 1 minute. And while obviously it would have been nice to see maybe a 5-second interval there for action sports, this is a cool feature. But one thing to be aware of is that this interval recording, if you turn it on, it will continue working and running and recording even when the camera is turned off. So if you put it in your bag with this on, it will probably deplete your battery by the time you reach for it again, if you forget about it. So make sure you're only using this when you really want to. And you can also synchronize the camera's internal time with the official GPS satellite time. So that's something I'd recommend doing on a regular basis to keep your photos up to date. So as you can see here, the satellite icon is lit up, and I'm not going to take a picture, as then you'd know where I live, and that would be sort of scary. But if I were to shoot a geotagged photo, the GPS data would all show up down here. And all you need to do to access that is continue clicking the OK button until it shows up. So that's basically the camera. So just to sum up the negatives, the cons, right now the price, although that's definitely going down. Secondly, the image quality for landscape photos isn't that great. I don't like the vertical bars on the LCD when you're shooting pictures in 16 megapixel mode. And it would have been nice to see a higher resolution on the LCD, although I'm not complaining about HVGA, as this is pretty standard for cameras in this class. But if Pentax wanted to be ahead of the game, that would be one improvement that they could probably easily make for a camera like this. Finally, the pros. You can go underwater, you can take it anywhere. It has a lot of features for a camera that's this small. For example, if you go into the menu, you can remap the green button to make it control some more advanced things. And then when you click on it, you can directly control the exposure, the recorded pixels, the image quality, and the white balance, sort of like you would on a DSLR. So it does have a few features which advanced users will enjoy. And while it doesn't have manual controls or anything like that, it does show you the shutter speed and aperture, so you know if too slow settings are being used, or if you really need a tripod or something like that. So overall, I like this camera. I can definitely recommend it as a point and shoot or outdoor camera, as it can be very fun to take underwater photos. And I'm looking forward to seeing some user reviews on pentaxforums.com. We have a user review section in the camera database, so if you go on the home page, click the Databases tab, you can navigate to the camera database and post your own review of the camera. So to wrap things up, it's a very good camera, rugged, well built, waterproof. You can go swimming with it, you can abuse it. It shouldn't break. If it does break, Pentax will replace anything. Well, they'll try to repair it first, and if they can't fix it, they'll give you a new one for anything that's covered under the warranty. For example, if water gets in when you're swimming with it, they'll probably cover that, unless you're really abusing the camera, throwing it around or something like that. And I mean, there have been user reports of leaks happening on our forum, but chances are that those users probably didn't close the doors properly or had dust stuck in there or something like that. And the camera does seem well built, and Pentax themselves have put it through a lot of tests to make sure that it conforms to the specifications which they've laid out. And actually, if you look at it, they're all carefully labeled here. I don't know why Pentax decided to label the fact that it's waterproof so many places, but I guess it's good for a camera brand that's not really known, right? So finally, the price. The camera launched at an MSRP of $399 for the GPS version and $349 for the regular version. Now that price has already started going down at retailers, but I wouldn't get the camera until the price falls to the mid to low 200s, if not lower than that, as it tends to happen quite quickly with these Pentax cameras. So if you're looking to get an outdoor camera or a backup body or something like that to carry around everywhere, or a travel camera or vacation camera, the Optio WG-2 is a pretty good choice. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention is we took it out and actually put it in a remote controlled airplane, and we had it record 60 FPS video from there, and it worked fine, nothing happened to it, and the video is posted on the full review on pentaxforums.com, so we invite you to take a look at that. And also be sure to check out the sample photos which we've posted. And I apologize in advance for any issues with this video file. This is actually the fourth take of the entire review, as I've had problems with the K5's audio recording and file conversion. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I hope to see you guys again on a future pentaxforums.com video review.